Hi everyone, today I'm going to be kicking off my fantasy book review series. This is probably more aimed at people who've already read a lot of fantasy books, but also if you are new to fantasy and you're thinking about getting into some books, hopefully it's going to be useful as well. I will do a kind of generic non-spoiler review of each book that I go through, and then I'll get to the details at the end for people who have read it or just don't care, and really talk about the interesting things that I like about it. This isn't so much a serious review. I haven't got bullet points all written out. I'm just going to be talking off the top of my head, having a chat, just remembering some of these really great stories. Warhammer Fantasy meant a lot to me, as I'm sure it did a lot of other people, and losing it to Age of Sigmar was a big blow, but we're not here to just complain about that. That's not what these videos are going to be, so don't worry. That being said, I'm starting off my series with Ulrika the Vampire, because this was the first book series that I read after the End Times. Before the End Times, I was just a Chaos player. I didn't really read many books other than books specifically about Chaos. But then when that happened, and I realised, you sort of realise what you've lost a bit, and losing the fantasy world, it really gave a resurgence of interest to me for all the other races that I hadn't given the time of day before. And I thought that vampires would be a good start, probably, like sort of evil, kind of close to chaos, in a way, rather than going straight to the Empire or something, which I was never interested in, although now I am. So I decided to give this a go. I think by this point I had already read the Vampire Wars von Carstein trilogy. I didn't enjoy that one so much. I'll get to it eventually, but I thought vampires were a decent starting point. So I gave this one a try. I found it on Amazon. I got the trilogy, and without skipping ahead too much, it's really good. I enjoyed this trilogy immensely. It was definitely a really good choice for being the first books that I read diving back into Warhammer Fantasy. I'm normally a notoriously slow reader, and I tore through these books uncharacteristically quickly because I just enjoyed them so much. They had a bit of everything. They were just perfect for getting back into fantasy after not being kind of lost for a while and thinking, oh, I miss the world and all that sort of thing, because they're quite a good adventure. Now, as far as I'm aware, I haven't read these books yet, they're on the list. As far as I'm aware, the character Ulrika originates in the Gotrek and Felix novel. I think maybe Vampire Slayer, I'm not sure, I'm just guessing because it's vampires. But she is essentially a Kislev boyar's daughter, which is to say a nobleman, and she's a noblewoman. I'm not exactly sure how that translates to empire status, but she's important, her dad's important. And she's out with Gotrek and Felix hunting vampires, and she ends up being bitten by whichever one they're after. And because she's their friend, they don't really want to kill her, so they decide, instead of killing her, they'll take her to a Larmian coven in Nuln. I think this book is set in Nuln. Yes it is. Yes it is. Now, Larmian vampires are, I would say, unique among the vampire races in the old world, in that they have a very different idea of control. They, the von Carsteins, for example, they fought, the vampire wars. They wanted to take over the empire, take over humans, and raise them as cattle and that sort of thing. The Larmians flourish by being invisible. They are essentially, they're not exclusively female, but they're very heavily female. I think completely matriarchal. Most of them are women. They're generally considered the female faction, and they thrive by essentially, chasing the womanly ideals, being sexy and attractive and beguiling and wearing nice dresses and doing their makeup and hair and stuff, and basically attaching themselves to the arm of a powerful person, a duke or a governor or a general or a rich merchant or whatever, and they whisper into their ears, beguile them, and essentially have their will enacted through these powerful men. So by sending Ulrika to this known Lamia cult, it's essentially supposed to keep her out of trouble, make sure that they don't run across her in the wild one day and have to kill her. And they leave her in custody of Gabriella, who is the sort of mistress of this known coven, and tell her basically, raise her right and keep her out of trouble. Now, Ulrika, as you might have guessed from being a Kislevite and being off with Gotrek and Felix doing their adventures, she's not a, feminine woman. She's like a tomboy type character. Wears sort of, manly clothes, breeches, leather boots, jerkins, that sort of thing. She rides horses, sword fights, shoots bows and arrows, that sort of thing. So this is pretty much the worst thing that she can imagine. Doesn't like this at all. It's essentially being told you need to learn to be a woman. You need to just wear dresses and be pretty and flounce around the place and just beguile people, and don't do anything basically. This is also coming with vampiric powers, of essentially giving a woman who likes to fight and stuff superpowers, and so now it's even worse, and she really wants to go fight people, and they're saying no, you're more powerful than ever, but you need to just wear a dress and all that sort of thing. So it's pretty much the worst situation for her. And I was hesitant at this idea because just from what I've said, it sounds pretty. But you've seen it in any number of teen movies where there's some headstrong girl and it's like, no, you need to do this, and like Enola Holmes, when they're like, send her to the girls' school, the training proper women's girls' school or whatever, but she wants to be a detective. You've seen it 100 times. It's never normally that good. It's normally aimed at teenage girls and that sort of thing. So I was sort of going, yeah, I probably won't like this character. They often tend to come across as being very very arrogant while also quite stupid, headstrong, annoying, just angry teenage girls. But actually, one of the reasons I think this book was so good is she's actually not an insufferable character. She's actually quite relatable. You can definitely feel like, if I had these vampiric powers suddenly and I was stronger and faster, but then somebody's saying, oh no, you need to never ever use these incredible powers. You need to just pretend to be a gentleman, in my case, you can definitely feel for her, and she isn't too bratty. She isn't too bratty about it. It's more like it's more of a genuine anger and a genuine frustration than a sort of angsty teenage sort of rebellious type nonsense. So she's actually a pretty good character to get on board with. Also, as you'd expect from it being the main character, she's a good vampire. She doesn't want to drink blood. I think she tries drinking animal blood at first from the barns and that sort of thing. Doesn't really work, so then she decides, she's going to feed on like brigands and things, and bandits, because people kill them anyway. They kill people, so, may as well feed off of them. So, she has that going for her as well. She's like the sort of good, or at least, try to be good kind of vampire rather than the evil one. So, yeah, that's a brief introduction. Now, the non-spoilers, before I go into the details. The fundamental idea of this book is it's kind of a murder mystery. It's a pretty interesting idea because obviously, these vampires are very formidable, powerful, dangerous creatures. They are the predators in the dark, but something is killing them. There's like a vampire serial killer that's killing vampires, but it's not as if there's a witch hunter going around staking them and whatever. It's not sort of some official Sigmarite business where they think, oh, we've got a witch hunter on the loose. It's more like they've just been butchered, and it's crazy. They don't know what's going on. They're scared, and Ulrika, while struggling to deal with this crappy new society that she's stuck in, she hates it. Decides to essentially be naughty, disobey the Gabriella, the people in charge, and play detective and go investigate these murders. And it's really interesting. It goes down a pretty good rabbit hole. I don't think I expected the result that we got. It's definitely more interesting than a straightforward kind of just straightforward battle book. There's no battles in this book. There are later in the series, but nothing in this book. It really is a very self-contained detective type book. It's interesting. You see a different side to the Empire that you don't normally see. It's like seeing the underbelly of the Empire, the front that the Empire has, but then actually you've got Nuln basically run by these vampires. It's a good adventure. It's really interesting. You get to explore a lot of the world that you might not normally see. As far as non-spoilers go, if you're looking for an interesting book to get back into fantasy, I definitely recommend it. I think this is a really good book. I think the whole trilogy is good. I'm not going to do a rating system. I don't really know. I can't compare things to each other. But this is definitely good, and I give it a positive recommendation for sure. I enjoyed it a lot. getting straight into the sort of the real discussion, the spoilers discussion then, because that's what I really want to touch on. You know, I hope that you leave comments if you've watched this, or even leave comments to let me know that, you know, what you enjoyed about this book, your favourite bits, because I'm going to just start sharing mine now, and, you know, we can talk about it hopefully. So the plot obviously turns out to be, stop watching, you know, this is spoilers now. The plot turns out to be that actually it's another vampire killing these Lamians. It's a Strigoi vampire. Now, Strigoi vampires are the bestial vampires who've lost a lot of their humanity and began to, you know, not mutate exactly, but sort of devolve into a much more bestial, savage nature. And this particular one was essentially hunted down into a pit, and then had, while it was hiding in the bottom of the pit, it had all these boulders poured in on top of it, so it was crushed and pinned, and it spent like 200 years or something just in there, going mad with boredom. And then this little necromancer man let him out and basically told him that the Lamian vampires had betrayed him and he needs to go and kill them. Now, I'm not going to go into why that happens, because that's for the later books, and, you know, that's like spoilers for them. Because you don't really find out in this book exactly what happened. It's more connected to the later stories. But, you know, I thought that was really cool, the idea that you've got these Lamian vampires being hunted by this enormous, terrifying, bestial Strigoi vampire. It's pretty cool. The detective work is, you know, it's okay. Ulrika basically, you know, scouts around at night and that sort of thing. She actually meets a witch hunter, a young witch hunter, an inexperienced young witch hunter who's just trying to do his best. And, you know, they enter a romance, and so, you know, a forbidden romance essentially. You know, that's quite cool. You know, he helps her. He helps her on her. He thinks that she's just, you know, a Kislavite noblewoman essentially. I think she tells me she's some kind of detective, and they work together and start scouting around the graveyards and things, and, you know, track down this little necromancer guy and all that sort of thing. And eventually they track the Strigoi vampire to you know, a house somewhere, and there's a big fight, you know, at the end of the book, and he's mortally wounded. And, you know, this is the big kind of emotional element for Ulrika, because she's seen the thralls that the vampires have. They can essentially take somebody's blood, but not all of it, and it makes them a thrall, and they're just like, you know, in kind of a lovesick trance, you know. And so that's her option essentially, but she doesn't want to do it because it's, you know, it's like a betrayal of somebody that you love. She doesn't want to do it. She'd rather let him die, and so I think Gabriella breaks his neck. Although I'm not sure if that happens at the end of this book or the beginning of the second one, because they pretty much follow on from each other. One of the most frustrating elements of this book and the future books as well is there's another woman called Hermione, and she is essentially Gabriella's equal, but I think maybe just below her, but she's kind of a wormy, you know, just vaguely below equal. She's just a horrible, treacherous woman. She just spends this whole book undermining and there's a scene in this book where the Strigoi vampire, you know, breaks into a room they're all in, and she runs off and, you know, slams the door. Gabriella and, you know, Ulrika are trying to follow her, and she just slams the door on them, you know, and she's just awful. And, you know, it builds her up to be the kind of character where you're just kind of waiting for her to, you know, get what she deserves, which she doesn't in this book, unfortunately. But, you know, she's very frustrating. She's a very frustrating character. I'm not sure that I really remember too many standout details from this book. I think I have more to say when we get to the second one, which I think I have a lot more points that I thought were interesting and that I remember. Because really nothing too outlandish happens in this book. It really is just the kind of detective, you know, going around trying to investigate these murders, which again, like I said, they're really cool. You know, all of these women have, you know, they're all powerful vampires. And they all have different jobs around the city, and, you know, they're trying to figure out where is it going to strike next, and, you know, what even is it? How is it killing these vampire ladies? It's nice. I don't think, you know, like I said, I don't think there's too many massively standout things in this book that I can talk about compared to, again, you know, the later books where maybe a few more bigger things I can really talk about happen. Fundamentally, it's aside from those few points that I said, you know, Gabriella, Sorry, Hermione being terrible. You know, you will hate her. She will frustrate you. Interesting to see a Strigoi running around the place, you know, killing people. It's a pretty... Yeah, I didn't really understand what was going on between the little necromancer man and the Strigoi. It seemed kind of odd to me. I wasn't really sure. I think they explain more in the later books exactly what that was about. But for a while I was pretty confused, and I really couldn't put together in my head, you know, what exactly this was, because he basically described him as this little fat man that smelled of cloves, and that's pretty much how they tracked him. They just were like, oh, the little fat man that smells of cloves, and they chased him. And you know, I didn't understand why he was in league with this Strigoi, but you know, it sort of comes together at the end. It's pretty good. It's pretty grim. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm a slow reader, but I really tore through this because I wanted to get to the bottom of it. I wanted to know what was going on, find out who was killing them and how they were going to stop it. And you know, essentially this book is a small element of a much grander plan. There's an enormous grand plan going on over the next 2 books, and the events in this book are, you know, a setup. They're introducing the characters, they're introducing all the main characters and their attitudes and their moods. And it's, you know, what's going on with this Strigoi vampire is a very small element of this larger plan, which is why I said, you know, in later books I'll have more sort of spoiler talk to go over, because there's really not much I can do aside from just talk about plot points. You know, I'm not going to do that. But if you have read it, you know, leave your thoughts. I'd love to, you know what you think about this book. And even if you haven't read it and you've just watched the spoilers anyway, I still recommend it. It's a good series. You know, it's really nice. Yeah, so thank you. I will do part 2 as soon as I can. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't got much of a schedule on this channel yet, but we'll see. I'll get to it as soon as I can. All right, thank you.